Right, good good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's Anthony Carpin here at the Cambridgeshire Collection here in Cambridge Central Library. Now, some of you may have seen some of the blog posts that I have put out about the emerging local plan for Greater Cambridge, and one of the reasons why I'm here, this is basically a local repository for everything to do with the county, amongst other things. In particular, it's got that big selection of books that you've got behind me, which is all about the history of the city and the county, and also it's got a row of microfiche newspaper. I don't really know what to call them these days. It's just microfiche images, which on the readers that are to that side, you can actually go and have a look at. But what the archivists or archivists of previous generations did was they went and, as well as saving kind of like a daily copy of the newspapers of centuries gone by, is they created newspaper cuttings like these. And this one is all about city planning, which you can imagine for somebody like me is like gold dust. And so what they effectively are, because I just wanted to show you some of them, is it pulls out headlines like that. This one is from 1984, and it was actually to do with the redevelopment of the quayside, but it was a scheme that ultimately got scrapped because the city council refused it at planning committee by one vote. Had they approved it, it could have been very, very different. Now, throughout the 1960s and the 1970s, the city and the county and the university and everybody else, even ministers, were squabbling over who should have the final say over what the future of Cambridge should be. And I'll just pull out this article here. This is basically the Cambridge City Council planners basically saying to Whitehall planning inspectors, look, don't just make stuff up as you go along or come out with ideas on how you think Cambridge should be. And they were actually appealing over the heads of planning inspectors directly to the Environment Secretary of State, who was Anthony Crosland of Labour. And it was at a time when there were actually kind of big disagreements between central government and local government as to what the future of the city should be, even in Harold Wilson's government under a Labour-run council as it was in those days, because it was quite volatile in those days when control of the city council switched between Labour and the Conservatives. One other thing to be aware of is who had what powers over planning, and town planning certainly in the 1960s and also early 70s, before they went through another round of local government reform, something that we actually haven't had for the last 50 years. It was the county council, strangely enough, that was responsible for the local plan. And it's just incredible to see and read about some of the various debates that we had. And one of the things they had in the mid-1970s was this so-called Cambridge Blueprint, where they just involved the whole of the city and said, what do you want the future to be? And the Cambridge Evening News in 1976 came up with a series of pieces, and this is the only one that's actually written by a woman. This was the the leader of the Liberal group, Mrs. Joan Finch, and all of the other ones are just like written by men. So this is the Mayor of Cambridge, Councillor Bob May, and they all had kind of like very subtle differences. This is a really interesting one as well, by the Conservative leader at the time, Mr. John Powley even, and he was the leader of the council. I actually drove through the Grafton Centre before becoming a Member of Parliament himself. But one of the things that it ultimately did in driving through what was actually locally very unpopular, a very unpopular scheme, because it just slapped this big shopping centre in the middle of a neighbourhood that really had its own personality, but was really suffering from planning blight. It was the Kite. And the city responded over the next 15-20 years by basically deconstructing and taking down his political party from one that ran the council in 1979, or the late 1970s, to one that by the millennium did not have a single councillor on it, and had also lost control of the parliamentary seat. And so there's a PhD thesis waiting for somebody to basically study and research to find out and tell the story of the decline and implosion of what was actually one of the greatest civic institutions in our city's history. It mirrored actually the decline of the Cambridgeshire District Co-op Society, but that's for another story. Anyway, my 6 minutes is up and I'll finish it there. Thank you.